All right, and we are live. So, welcome to another episode of AI Marketing for Remodelers and Builders. If you don't know us, I'm Kai. I'm our lead consultant, everything AI marketing strategy. I'm your guy. And then with me is Spencer, our CEO and founder. Spencer, we've got a very clarifying, streamlining episode today.
Oh, nice.
We're going to talk about the three areas remodelers and builders should really be focusing their AI efforts in time, effort, all of that good stuff. And Spencer, the reason I wanted to do this episode was we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. You've seen all the open claw stuff going on X and Twitter. People setting up their own autonomous agents. We're having more and more clients as well come to us wanting to automate, more parts of their business using AI agents. So I want to take this episode as a pause and basically say there is so much out there right now. You're probably feeling a ton of overwhelm. And so I want to just tell you the main areas that you should focus on where you're going to see the most results.
Yeah, I like it. We've hit on it a couple of times, but it's super easy to go on X or scroll somewhere and see like people doing insane stuff with AI. And then you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm falling way behind. And then you just kind of get into like, how will I ever build that? And you just end up, you're just sitting there stuck doing nothing. And so, yeah, it's just about taking steps forward and continuing to learn. But yeah, there are some pretty crazy things you can do. At least that's what the people are saying. Whether they're fluffing it up a little more or not is hard to say at this point.
There was some pretty nuts stuff, but yeah, every time, I am literally using AI every single day, implementing, learning about it, and I still go on Twitter, and I feel like all of those guys take lines of speed before they post, and they're just like, "This is what I just built this whole agent army, this whole flock, this new thing." So I don't know if I already said the promise here, but I'll repeat it. If you listen to this episode, you're going to be less overwhelmed with AI. You're going to know exactly where to focus your learning and implementation efforts. So there's two main buckets we'll talk about as far as where to put your AI time. Let's start with just a question here, Spencer, and talk about the overwhelm in this industry specifically. So I know you're running like a sales cohort right now, so I don't know if you've heard anything from that, but just from conversations that you've had on a scale of 1 to 10, like how overwhelmed do you think the average builder or remodeler is with AI right now?
Yeah, I think I would say it's maybe in that like 6 to 7 range. I think people are feeling overwhelmed and kind of not where to start. But I think some people, are using tools. They're using ChatGPT. They're doing some basics, right, which is awesome. I'm not saying basics as a negative. Like they're getting involved, they're using the tools, they're trying out a few things, but it does lead to very quickly feeling like, oh my gosh, but there's so much. And then I do think there's a corner of the market that's still just kind of ignoring it and hoping it will go away, which it won't, but yeah.
Yeah. If you think of like that bell curve, I think it's like, people all the way on the first end of the spectrum, they're just like, I'm just ignoring it, right? Like kind of how you mentioned. And then it seems like people that are like really like just getting into it, there's almost too much to get into. So you're like, I'm trying to get into ChatGPT, I'm trying to get into Claude, I need to build agents. And then you go all the way on the other end of the bell curve that's just like, nope, like I'm chilling. Like I got my workflows, I know what I'm doing, I know I'm a top user, like in my, in my niche. But yeah, I would agree about like that 6 to 7 range is like what I've been seeing as well. Do you just have like any like guesses on like why do you think that is? I don't have a specific data points here, but is there any theories that you have as to like why people are a little bit overwhelmed by these tools?
Yeah, I think it's pretty common to feel overwhelmed with new technology in general. And then this one is expanding, I would say, like in almost every direction really fast, right? It's expanding side to side, but then it's also like the tools are going deeper and deeper, north to south, if you will. And so I think it's just that with layered on that there's a zillion use cases, and it's almost like when you're in discovery, I think that like the trader bros would call it like we're in price discovery, where
Yep.
you
Yeah.
break through like a ceiling and like a stock or cryptocurrency is running, and you're like, we don't know where this is going to land. That's kind of where AI is right now. It's like we're in discovery, and that just everything's breaking these ceilings, and it's like, wow, we can do this now and we can do this now. but then there's no end in sight, and it's kind of like we haven't settled out into like, this is how we use this type of technology because it's still advancing so quickly. And I don't know, hopefully, I know you had a prediction that we'd kind of settle into kind of a more normal, and I think that will happen in different pockets, but it will be interesting to watch because everything that I continue to read about it is it's so exponential in nature that yeah, there's just a lot of unknowns. I think that's a big part of it. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so there's two things. One, I'll answer my original questions of just as far as like why do I think that overwhelm is. I think you touched on a couple of them, but I just think like the sheer amount of like tools and trends, and especially if you're on social media and especially Twitter slash X. I mean, they're all hopping to different tools every week. They're all hopping to like almost every day. They're trying out different workflows. They're building agents. They hop to the next hot thing. It's always like, ooh, Claude released their new model. Everybody go cancel ChatGPT. Oh, Claude sucks now. Like everybody go cancel their Claude. So I think it's that. I think just looking specifically in this industry, there's so many use cases. If you're, a founder or you're like the top of the line at your company, as far as like marketing, ops, sales, hiring. I mean, just when we've talked about getting ready and how to use ChatGPT as a remodeler and builder, we realized during that episode, it's like there's a lot here. We need to break this down and we need to slow it down. But I think one of the biggest ones too is it's just so fluid right now, and you kind of mentioned that as well. It's so fluid with what AI can do, and there's really no good, like I guess, like rubric you could say. There's no way to, how can we really tell things are working? Like, cool, we're showing up in AI search, but I've had clients tell me like, how can I like is there like a pill I can just like do? Like, let's do that. Like, I can't run ads. Like, how do we, like, well, they don't really tell you that. We just follow best SEO practices. But I think that goes into it too, because, you mix that with all the different tools and trends that you can trying to get results, all different use cases. And at the end of the day, it's still so fluid that you don't know if it's really working or how long it will work if they change a model. I think that plays into all of it for sure.
Yeah, the rapid change is really, it can be exhausting, because you're just like, man, I can't take, catch a breath on, learn. You just got to stay in it, which is hard. It's hard.
As a person that follows AI and uses AI every day, it is very hard. I feel like I'm always falling behind. And the second part too, I wanted to talk about because you talked about my prediction, and my original prediction for people that don't know was that these tools wouldn't, there wouldn't be so much new, right? So last year, amazing image models. Now these things can make video. We had Notebook LM blow up. Memory context, how much memory can hold in a single section, like exploded. I predicted less of that and more that these companies would make it easier for the average person to use these tools. I think to an extent that's still true, but nobody expected something like OpenClaw to come out. And if you're not familiar with OpenClaw, it is a completely autonomous AI agent that people are buying Mac Minis, Spencer, basically little computers, installing this local AI agent on this computer, and that is its computer. It runs everything. It's running its own social accounts. People created like a Reddit for these agents, and now it's called Moltbook, and it's only AI agents posting on this subreddit asking each other for help. There was one that was trying to scam people. They were trying to get API keys. No, this is honestly like pretty crazy sci-fi stuff it's here right now. I did not expect that at all. But I will say that when it first came out, hard to set up. You had to buy your own device and all of that. Already, Spencer, we've seen Meta, Facebook, hop on it, and now they've already let you can set it up in like 5 minutes on the cloud. So like that's like where I'm coming from, where like they're gonna make it easier for the average person to use these tools. But maybe there's gonna be way more new than I was originally anticipating.
I mean, maybe you just had half the prediction right, which is like, yeah, it is going to be easier for the average user to use, and there's going to be tons of new stuff. So yeah,
Which isn't a bad thing. It isn't
yeah,
a bad
I
thing.
agree. I
So
agree. Yeah, because as long as that first one is true, then it will feel accessible to everyone.
for sure. So getting back into how to feel less overwhelmed with AI, I'm going to give everybody here just a quick framework that they can follow. And it's the 80-20 rule. And you can there's like a billion 80-20 rules, Spencer, because it just fits so well. Essentially, all you're doing here is focus 80% of your efforts into this, 20% into this. And so one of the biggest mistakes that I see with remodelers and builders wanting to learn AI is they are doing too much passive learning. They're spending 80% of their time watching videos, reading guides. Even if you're watching this, that is great, but you should not be spending more than 20% of your time if you're serious about learning AI for your business. Obviously, if it's entertainment for you, you just want to watch these videos, go ahead. But you shouldn't be spending more than 20% of your time learning with AI, passive learning, right? Because you're going to learn the most with doing. And so where that 80% comes from is that implementation. So 80% of your time with AI should be using it, doing different use cases, testing different things out, actually implementing something. And then that 20% can be for more of that passive learning where you're just watching videos, you're reading things. There obviously, Spencer, would be some like, bleed over as you're trying to like, if you're trying to learn how to implement something, if you're, reading something or watching something to learn how to implement it, that's a little different. I'm talking where you are doom scrolling on social media, like on X and looking at what everybody's saying, or you're just watching tons of YouTube videos. I mean, when I first started with I think I'd watched like 10 videos a day. And I realized I'm not really getting anywhere with this. So I cut that out and I just started focusing on actually implementing, testing different things out. And that's when I saw like my skills and my knowledge just start shooting up very quickly.
Yeah, it's almost like, I love the percentages that you laid out because it's probably for a lot of people reversed. It's 80% is spent learning and 20% doing, or even a higher percentage learning. Um, but I think the learning piece is important. I think you get two things out of it. One, you kind of get the context for like, oh, how I could use this tool and apply it in my business. The other piece that you get is kind of what we're talking about, where it's like, what is this OpenClaw thing? What is this ABC? What is this brand? So you get exposed to like whatever's on the cutting edge, but then the rest of the learning is like, I'm gonna go watch a tutorial or I'm gonna see how to where I'm getting stuck. But as you said, the bulk of the time just like playing around with it, trying it, you know, 20-30 minutes of that and you'll learn a lot more, and it'll get baked into your actual like process, your systems, your company, than yeah, just sitting there and consuming.
And we're conditioned to be consumers. I'm pretty sure we talked about it in an early pod episode, but I forgot the exact numbers. But it's like I kid you not, it's probably even larger than this. But I think for every 1,000 people, only like one of them creates content, right?
Wow.
And so like that really tells you how many passive consumers there are. Like that's how we are conditioned. That's how these algorithms have conditioned us. And it's crazy because you think about the amount of comments and engagement you see on YouTube, Reddit, TikTok. The 4x the amount of that are people that don't do anything. They don't do any engagement, and they're like the lurkers, and that's what makes up the majority of these platforms. So when you think about it like that, and then you apply it to this, yeah, it's no wonder a lot of people are passive learners, and that's not necessarily a bad thing in nature. But once you start breaking that passive learning habit all the time, and you just start doing, you're gonna learn a lot better. And you'll notice as you're doing the passive learning, you're just gonna start getting that itch, like, I just wanna do it. I just wanna do this. Like, let me pull this up another screen. Like, let me try this. Or let me just pull the transcript here, put this into my AI companion. Like, let's figure out how I can apply this to like my own use cases.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. That's good advice.
Awesome. So let's get into the first step here. So 3 steps here. These 3 steps are going to help you feel way less overwhelmed with AI. And you're going to know exactly where to put your learning and implementation efforts. Number one, Spencer, should not be surprised to anybody. Systems and SOPs, technically, basically your foundation, right? And so how you should think about this is AI is not going to replace your processes. It's going to amplify them. So if your process is fuzzy, if you don't really know what the output that you want, if that's fuzzy, really what AI is going to give you is going to be fuzzy. It's not going to be great. And that's usually one of the first blockers that we see. And so what I mean with like systems SOPs, I'll give a really good example, Spencer, is sometimes we have, prospects come in and they're like, I want to replace my entire sales process with AI agents. I want them to text all prospects. I want them to book meetings. I want them to work them through the funnel. And we're like, great. Do you have a system for that? Do you know which pitches work? Do you know what messages work, what your cadence should be? What's your best performing script right now? And they're like, So if you don't know that, AI is not going to know that. AI is great. It's amazing, but it's about as good as the brain that you give it. So you need to feed it those systems. You need to feed it those SOPs for it basically to have a better output for you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example. Sometimes we wanna it's basically like we wanna skip the step, and you kinda wanna skip the hard step, which is, like, "Oh, how do I do this now?" It's like, "Well, I don't really do it now, and I haven't tried any," like you said, with the messaging or the cadence or whatever it is, and so, however, you can still use AI as maybe a thought partner to work through what that should look like and build it out a little faster, but to your point, you can't skip the steps, of doing the important work of, yeah, is this just some like system in theory that ChatGPT spit out, but it doesn't really work the same way in my business, or it's like, oh well, we wouldn't quite do that, or we wouldn't say that, or we wouldn't, and it's like that's the part you gotta get documented, I think, is what you're describing this example.
Exactly, and you mentioned the time part. 1000% it is worth the time to set up the SOPs and systems and really think about all of your different processes across your marketing, your ops, your onboarding, your sales, everything. And two, let's say like AI were to blow up and you can never use it again. This just comes down to better delegation overall. And that's isn't that like one of the largest goals we have with AI, right? Is with better SOPs and better systems, that's just better delegation overall, not only to AI, but to people as well. Right. And one of your biggest goals with AI is one delegation, but also trust. So if you know that it's following all of these instructions that you have, it's following your best practices, and it's doing it in the system that makes sense for your business, that's just going to help your trust because it's going to know what it's going to do. It has certain guardrails. It's going to be pretty consistent with the output that it gives you.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great.
A couple of examples here too is this is like using project folders in ChatGPT or Claude, uploading different context around your processes. What's your lead follow-up process, your discovery call checklist? Uploading all of those things and giving that to AI helps a ton. Before too, I actually skipped one of our first steps here is to actually pick your main tool. So we mentioned it, but what I always suggest here is that if you want an all-around assistant that's super easy to use, just start with ChatGPT. It's great if you're not super technical. OpenAI is huge. We tested out some connectors, Spencer. They didn't work too well, but eventually they will.
Yeah, next month
Um,
it'll be fine, right?
yeah, yeah. You
Wait
never
30
you never
days.
know. But as far as like what tools to pick, right? ChatGPT, if you're not super technical, good all arounder. If you are heavier into workflows, if you want to mess with integrations right now and you're a little bit more technical, Claude is great as well. It's gonna you can basically both pay a $20 subscription for both, but Claude uses up its subscription a little bit faster than ChatGPT. So most people are on the $100 a month for Claude versus the $20 a month for ChatGPT. But Claude's great. It's great if you're more technical because they have a coding platform as well. It gets a little bit more like into your computer if you want, which is nice. Just does a little bit better with that two-way integration that we talked about before compared to ChatGPT. But both are great. I really recommend those two. Main reason I don't recommend Gemini is it doesn't have folders, Spencer, and it drives me insane. So ChatGPT and Claude are like my two top recommendations for tools.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And it's you don't need to go and find a bunch of other tools. Like just pick one of the big ones that, and like you said, you gave a good clear like less technical chat, more technical Claude. Great. Just pick and go.
Yep, pick and go. I suggest paying for it because if you pay for it, higher chance that you'll use it. And also stick to it for at least 90 days. No matter what big update went out on another tool, just stick with that one for like 90 days, a full quarter, and I promise you, you'll feel way less overwhelmed because you have one tool to worry about, one tool of updates to worry about, those models, all of that.
Good advice.
Love it. So let's go to focus area number two. So the first one was those SOPs systems, which is your foundation. Number two is going to be data analysis. So this is going to be your top implementation task with AI after your SOPs and your systems. Um, Biggest reason is this is like your biggest leverage, Spencer. So you don't need to create these crazy dashboards on Google Analytics or HubSpot. Really, just start with exports and ask questions. As far as I can't think of the exact how to say the ratio, Spencer, in my head, but I'm thinking time to value. I don't think there's a better time to value ratio that AI gives than data analysis. Being able to feed it tons of different CSVs, markdown files, PDFs, spreadsheets, for it to give you those insights, clean it up, that saves you so much time, and those insights, those could be huge for your business.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you're probably right in terms of that time to value ratio. It's incredible what you can dump in and then just prompt out answers. And so, yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot about just like uploading data, from your reporting, your traffic, your leads, your like where stuff is coming from. But I've definitely been using it very heavily in transcript analysis recently. And I know it can be a little more difficult, as a remodeler, a custom builder, if you're thinking about sales process and call recordings or meeting recordings. But I would encourage you. I mean, if it's on Zoom, like great, you've got that. Record everything. Those phone calls that you're taking for phone pre-qual, there are ways to get those recorded, using something like CallRail or anything like that. But the in-person meeting, you can buy some of those little recording devices. You could record on your phone and just telling people like, hey, I just like to record this to make sure I document everything. I don't miss any details. But when you stack up 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30 of these calls, you can really start to see where things are going right, where things are going wrong. But being able to dump all that information in first, versus having to like go through it all yourself. That's been a recent favorite of mine is more use cases around transcripts.
1000%. And I'm glad you really said that too, because even like digging a little deeper, you could, upload like, I gave an example here of like 3 to 5 transcripts, but like you said, 50, 100, 150. That's for the topic, like objections. Like, when do they appear in the call? What are the best responses that have like moved past those objections? Like, who's getting the farthest? Which are your sales guys, or which script? What wasn't addressed in that? Like, just asking questions about that can help give you like a good high level trend overview of like, yep, like you should be saying this and this and this. And then once you piece all those together, you can say, great. Now can you just make me a script based on what we just talked about with all of those recommendations? Those are things, Spencer, that would take probably like weeks to go through and look through. And even if you could do it faster, probably wouldn't be at the same quality, because let's be real, we're human. We're gonna get tired of those, or we have our own biases. So yeah, I love the call transcript, because when people think about data analysis, they just think about all these different numbers, right? It's like quantitative versus qualitative, right? They think of like all of those numbers here, but there's really good qualitative data in there as well that you can pull from transcripts, which, though there's an argument that that might be the most important, data metrics to start with in this industry.
Yeah, and just to build on that example, a cool way to use it too is say take 5 transcripts from calls that got the outcome you wanted. So either booked the meeting or sold the project or the design agreement. Then you could take 5 that didn't close and say, "Hey, show me what happened in the ones that did. Show me what happened in the ones that didn't." And then to wrap it up to your point, say, "Hey, based on these ones closed, these ones lost, make me a new script that basically will ensure that we're guiding towards those closed ones." And usually in the ones that lost, you missed going over process, or you missed a section that you normally cover. You didn't ask a few of those tougher questions to get to budget or pain or goals or whatever it was. And so then you can use that to get it into the master script.
Yeah, there's so many fun use cases with that. I'm actually really excited to work more with like our sales team as well, to see how we can tighten up those scripts and all of that. And working with our BDR Tony, he's super pumped for that. So, we'll update y'all. Last focus area here, and this one is going to be some implementation, some passive learning. I'd say probably 50-50 here. This is something that is super cool, but probably not something you should be spending a ton of your implementation time on, and that's vibe coding. And so with vibe coding, basically with AI, you can make truly anything. So you can make apps, you can make different modules. We've been playing around with making custom HubSpot modules using HTML coding through ChatGPT. You can make full landing pages through HTML. The world is like truly your oyster with vibe coding. And if you were to invest in another tool besides Claude or ChatGPT, I do suggest a Lovable. It's like $20 a month as well. and that's going to be more for your entertainment. It's just super fun. We've done it a couple times with the team, Spencer. It just we have an app idea and we just build it in 30 minutes. And I think that's like a big aha moment for people because we know the app isn't perfect. The code base probably isn't perfect, but just knowing the possibilities, that's just going to start getting your mind running. So, okay, like what else? Like when I'm really good at this, like what else can I truly build? Um, so yeah, I think like with the industry going more towards like interactive web modules, personalization, there's something that's really cool that could help you stick out.
Yeah, and I think this is an area where I haven't spent as much time in, but you've sent me a few things and it's got me thinking about what are just some internal tools that you could build for your own company, your own process, your own team. Um, a lot of times, being marketers, we always think about like how could we create some cool tools on the marketing side or as lead gen or lead capture, whatever. But internally, like we do, you do, listening, have dozens and dozens of these processes and workflows and systems, and it's usually people driven or passing things. And so I've been starting to do a little bit of thinking around, yeah, what are some ways we can vibe code some internal tools that would be really helpful on internal processes or reporting or whatever that looks like.
Yeah, and I'll give you a couple examples here. There's a ton of companies that are making their own software. We talked about this a while back, but this is really happening now. And basically, the trend is that these larger companies are spending 10 to 20K, a month on these like AI engineers or coders that just know AI, and they're just asking them to build their own internal system. So, for example, people are building their own client portals. So instead of paying a service to have a client portal for them, they build their own client portal. People are building their own CRMs. I'll be really interested to see how Go High Level and HubSpot respond to that. But CRMs that can do everything that they want without having to increase your subscription. As far as the external tool side, something that we've been testing for the listeners out there is like interactive cost calculators based on our information for our clients. Quizzes to help pre-qualify in basically we're running a webinar campaign. It's like, is this webinar right for you? Answer these questions and see here. There's tons. I think the most interesting one for us, Spencer, and probably the one we'll do an episode on, is lots of companies are just seeing what they can do as far as like, okay, here's four tools in our stack. How many can we just make ourselves? Can we really replace Asana? Can we really replace HubSpot? And it's getting to a point where companies that are really investing in vibe coding and investing in those own internal tools themselves, they're getting to a spot where they're starting to cut out some tools out of their stack because you don't have to pay an extra subscription to want to get this extra feature. Now you just make it, which is really powerful.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's an area where if that continues to progress, software is just going to, I think I don't know, yeah, the whole software space in general, I think could just convert to the software I'm paying for is the AI tool, and then I just build whatever software I want, but I need all these additional subscriptions for everything. So yeah, that'll be one to watch. But I think in the interim, like you can vibe code some pretty cool stuff, and it can have such a narrow, specific use case, and it's still worth the time and effort. Like you might spend an hour or two building something that does like three parts of one process, but once you've built it, it doesn't cost you anything. And so it's like, oh, well, good. I don't need to pay another $20 or $50 a month for this tool that I just built. You just build it. And so you might have 10 or 20 of those, in a few months if you work on it.
Yeah, I was glad you brought up like the change in software. The SaaS industries, I don't know if they're freaking out, but a
They
lot of
should
people
be. Yeah.
outside, yeah, a lot of people outside the SaaS industries, like they should be freaking out. We're a really interesting one here that I'll talk about real quick before we start wrapping is HubSpot. HubSpot's evaluation, I guess, like their stock price has been steadily going down. It's been very surprising. And it's because of that one example. It's like probably the number one use case that a lot of companies have been talking about is making their own CRM. We know a lot of companies are on HubSpot. I don't think it's, I'm not saying, listen, if you want to try it as the average listener and go for it. We're not suggesting our clients start vibe coding their own CRMs just yet, but larger companies are definitely experimenting with, vibe coding their own CRM, building their own CRM. And because of that, HubSpot's definitely taking a hit. Go high level, I've heard, has taken a hit as well. Again, a lot of this is from social media, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But a lot of these theories here is because people are making their own tools. We're going to start seeing some of these larger SaaS companies, their stock price is going to start going down unless they, make some sort of change.
And the counterpoint to that too is that, when you subscribe to the, software as a service, you pay the subscription. Part of what you're paying for is that it always works and it doesn't break. And so if you build your own thing and it breaks, you have to fix it. And then the other big piece is that typically if people are if the software company is doing a good job, they are trying to invest in the development of their product and improve it and better it. And so again, if you build a tool, it's just going to stay there until you say, oh, we need to make this change or that change. And then you would be responsible for that. So, yeah, I think that's probably what's giving a lot of software companies a little bit of peace of mind, knowing that, like, hey, they still are providing whatever the software use case is, whether it's a CRM or project management, um, they're developing it and trying to make it better. But that's why I think like right now, at least, why not build a couple of just like niche tools that you're like, there isn't a software out there, or like nobody would build this thing. It's specific to your company. That can be a really great way to get started with this stuff to kind of test the waters.
And that's where we're at right now. And I'm really glad you brought that up because there's a reason why I say vibe coding should only be 50-50 right now, 50% implementation, 50% learning, massive learning. And that's because if you don't have a technical coding background, you can get stuck on a bug for hours.
Yeah.
And that's so much time lost. I've done that multiple times when I've been vibe coding. That's kind of part of it. But as far as like wanting to focus in and make real moves with AI, I don't want to spend most of my time vibe coding right now before I, focus on those two, focus areas first. Another thing too is, as you're starting to build tools and you start bringing people's information in, you become liable for their information. So one of the biggest issues with vibe coded apps right now is there are literally people on Twitter and X that go hack your app just to show you, like, yeah, like cool, y'all are vibe coding, but like these code bases are messy, they're not secure, and y'all don't know what you're doing. So if you're getting card information, you're getting names and contact information, now you become responsible if your stuff gets leaked. And if you don't really understand all of that, the security behind things and your code base and how to fix that, that gets into a really slippery slope. So what you said is perfect. Little personal tools, little tests here and there. Maybe down the road we start thinking about how we can replace some things in our stack. But again, that's why you pay for HubSpot. That's why you pay for Asana, because when the information's in there, their code is secure and you're not liable.
Yeah, I think that is huge, and I'm glad you said that. Um, Especially if you were thinking about using a tool to capture, yeah, credit card info or, contact information. And so, yeah, a very low risk, high probably reward way to start is internal tools that will help you or your team collaborate together, work together, better, faster. Super easy way to play around with it and continue your learning on building tools and stuff.
Yeah, 1000%. If you didn't catch the examples earlier for the listeners, little quizzes that you can do, little calculators as well. You could play around with a client portal that you can basically think like mini websites that get tweaked based on who the client was. So saying like, their name, what their project was, and putting things in a way, a layout that makes sense to them, that they'll digest the information. Those are all great things to test. So, Spencer, it's our favorite section of the pod, the PWOW. If you know, our parting words of wisdom. If there is one thing that people should remember from this episode, what should it be?
I really liked your split on the 80% implementing, 20% learning. And I think I'm probably more in the middle right now, and I should be shifting even heavier towards implementing more than consuming more. So that was my takeaway and parting words of wisdom is, yeah, just jump in and do it, and play around, and it will feel, a lot of it will feel like wasted effort. I think that's the hard part, and especially, if you're super busy, you're wearing lots of hats, you don't necessarily have time carved out where you're like, yeah, I can just burn 3 hours this week playing around. Like, unfortunately, that's part of learning in a growing ecosystem that has lots of undiscoverable parts of it. But yeah, I think it's still important, if you want to stay even just on the front end, not necessarily like the very, very leading edge of all of this, but just being in the game and staying ahead of your competition. Yeah, just upping the implementation time. What about you? What's your PWOW, Kai?
Yeah, my PWOW. So when making this outline, and I talked about the three focus areas, so the systems and SOPs, the data analysis, and the vibe coding. Originally, I didn't have systems and SOPs, and I was thinking more in like, okay, so like we really want people to focus 100% of implementation data analysis, 80/20 into vibe coding, and then 50/50 into agents or 20/80 into agents. But then I wanted to like zoom out, honestly, and think about, am I skipping a step here? I think it's really easy to skip a step for a lot of people when you're like in AI every day or you're in these specific workflows. But I want to think like, what is one focus area that could benefit 100% of people no matter what that do it? And that's when I got to like the systems and SOPs. So originally that wasn't in the focus areas. That honestly became one of the anchor focus areas. Because when I thought about it like that, I'm like, well, yeah, that makes sense. If you don't know what works best in your sales process, how are you going to automate it? If you don't know what you need help with in AI to fill the gaps, where do you even start? So those systems and SOPs, that foundation work, I think was my biggest PWOW there, because that no matter who does that, whether you do it once and never use AI again, or AI gets blown off the face of the planet or whatever, that is 100% valuable for humans and for robots, which is a huge win-win.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, the not skipping steps is kind of that key piece there.
Awesome. Well, that has been this episode of AI Marketing for Remodelers and Builders. As always, feel free to email me. My email is kb as in boy, iami at builderfunnel.com. Again, that is kbiami at builderfunnel.com. I want you to tell me which focus area you're going to start with, as well as what's your current percentage of learning to implementation. I'd be really curious to see if most of the listeners are passive learners, or most of them implementers, or somewhere in between. But that's been this episode, and we will see y'all on the next one.